If you are a YouTuber like myself, I will recommend you look into podcasting. Now, you might be thinking, why should I jump into podcasting? I'm already creating so much content for YouTube. Well, the cool thing is that most of us YouTubers can actually take our YouTube videos, download them, extract the MP3 file, make some adjustments, and then publish them to a podcast. That's what I have done for over a month now, and this is what my results look like. And I will go into those results a little bit further down in the video. Because think about it, as a YouTuber, and especially if you are a small YouTuber, you put a lot of time and effort into creating videos, and those videos might only get 100 views, 200 views, 500 views. But having a podcast allows you to reach a new audience that you normally would not reach just by putting out YouTube videos. Another benefit of reaching this new audience is that you are increasing your visibility, of course, and you can always redirect them to your YouTube content. An audience that also listens to your podcast is also an audience that usually listens a lot longer to your podcast episode than a regular YouTuber who watches your YouTube video. You can look into your metrics and especially look into your audience retention and watch time, and it might be 30%, 40%, but take that same content, put it in a podcast format, and you'll see that those watch times and audience retention rate is a lot higher for a podcast. And of course, the last thing about podcasting is that you can also monetize your podcast. Now, that's not something that I have done because my podcast is still fairly new. But when it comes to monetizing your podcast, you can always look into affiliate marketing, sponsorships, even placing ads in your podcast. So there's a whole other world out there beyond YouTube, of course. And podcasting is definitely something that you need to pay attention to. And the cool thing about podcasting is that you don't go to these individual websites like iHeartRadio or Spotify to submit your podcast. No, you just use a website like Buzzsprout. That's the one that I use. And you upload your podcast episode to Buzzsprout, and it automatically syndicates your podcast to all these different platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and the list goes on and on. So you are able to build a whole other subscriber base beyond YouTube. And of course, you also have access to your analytics, so you can see how your podcasts are performing, how long people are actually listening to your podcast, and a lot more demographical information. You can see the specific countries or locations of your listeners, where they're coming from. Also, which device is being used in order to listen to your podcast. So that might be an Android phone, it might be a desktop, it might even be an iPhone. So let's go ahead and look at some of my metrics. Now, just keep in mind that I've only been doing this for about a month or a little over a month. So it's not like I'm getting 50,000 downloads per episode. No, it's a lot lower. But one thing that I do notice is that with each new upload of a podcast episode, I do notice that my view count is growing, my subscribers are also growing, and a new episode also brings more views to the previous episodes. So the website that I use is buzzsprout.com to upload my podcast episodes, and it automatically syndicates to many different directories. Now, I'm not saying that you should use Buzzsprout. I'm using Buzzsprout because their interface is very clean, very user-friendly, and I don't have to think too much about how the whole website works. I just want to jump in, upload my episode, and keep it moving. Make more YouTube videos. So, and when it comes to getting my YouTube videos, it's a very easy process. All I do is, once I'm logged into my YouTube studio and I want to download a specific episode, I just download the video. Once downloaded, I extract the audio, and you can Google this, you don't have to use these specific websites. But I extract the audio, and then after I'm done extracting the audio, I import it into Audacity, and then I add my outro also, and which I then export again. And then when it comes to Buzzsprout, I just upload that episode into Buzzsprout. And of course, because I have the video in YouTube, I already have my title and description that I then also add into buzzsprout. Let's edit this one. So literally, this is one of my YouTube videos. Took all the content, got the title, the description, made some adjustments, and I'm even linking to my YouTube channel. Now, when it comes to the directories that you can syndicate your RSS feed to, which contains all your podcasts, there is a pretty big list, but most of your listens are gonna come from Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music. Now, you do have to sign up for these individually, and it's easy to get signed up because Buzzsprout makes it extremely easy for you to submit your podcast to these directories. But there are some that do take a long time to submit your podcast to. iHeartRadio is one of them. It's supposed to take about 2 weeks, but it took me over 4 weeks before I was listed in iHeartRadio. And then Pandora, I'm still waiting for Pandora. It's been over 4 weeks, or I think 5 weeks. And Pandora is the slowest one that I've noticed. And then when it comes to monetization, like I said earlier, I haven't monetized my podcast, but there is a plethora of things that you can do, from sponsorships, affiliate marketing, even having ads, of course, in your podcast also. And now let's look at the stats, because the stats are pretty interesting. This is where you can, of course, see my stats for the last 30 days. And every time that I post a podcast, and I don't have a specific schedule when I post, I just post when I feel like it, but it's usually within 3 to 4 days that I post a new episode. And you can see how my views or listens have been growing slowly but pretty nicely. Now, of course, you can dive into individual episodes, how they performed. So for example, if I look at my very first episode that I uploaded, you can see how many downloads I get per day. And if you scroll down, you can also see which apps are being used in order to listen to my podcast. So the app that usually gets me the most views is Spotify. Now, I've heard that it's usually Apple Podcast, but for me, it's always been Spotify, and Amazon Music at a second place. Now, if you want to see how your podcast is trending, is it actually growing? A good metric or a good stat to look at is the number of downloads per episode in the first days. So as you can tell, this on the right side, that's my very first episode that I uploaded. And the last two, these two, I just recently uploaded them, but you can see a trend going upwards. So that's actually a good thing. That means every time I upload a podcast, my podcast is actually growing. And of course, I can look at the specific apps or directories and devices where I'm getting all my downloads and my listens from. So if I do all episodes, you'll see that Spotify is of course number 1, followed by Amazon Music. And you can see that Apple Podcasts for me is number 10 on the list. And of course, you can also look at the location, the United States. This is where I'm getting most of my listens from, which makes sense, of course. But a cool thing is that you're not limited to only getting statistics from Buzzsprout. You can also go to specific providers to get some additional statistics. So if you look at Spotify, I already opened it. If you log into Spotify, it will give you additional metrics that Buzzsprout does not have. So if I click on my very first episode, you can see the episode performance. So this pretty much tells you the retention, which you can compare to the watch time or the audience retention when you're looking at your YouTube analytics. And then it has some additional information on your listeners, such as the gender, the age, where they're coming from. And interestingly enough, I get most of my listens coming from Spotify from the United Kingdom. So this should open up your eyes beyond just YouTube itself. Having a podcast has some additional benefits. Of course, you can reach a different audience that you might not be able to get on YouTube. And also, you can also start monetizing your podcast, even from the beginning, doing something like affiliate marketing. And of course, also take a look at buzzsprout.com. Buzzsprout is not the only player in town, of course, but I like using Buzzsprout. It's very easy to use that website. and it's only 12 bucks. And it has so many benefits because you just upload your episode to one location and it gets syndicated to all these different directories.